Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. We're kicking off today's video with a classic case of entitled passengers who managed to derail an entire international flight with their over-the-top drama. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Passengers from hell delay flight over fake emergency. Before my recent trip from Iceland to Canada, just minutes before takeoff, a girl jumped out of her seat and interrupted the hostess to say she forgot her purse with her passport in it in the airport and asked if she could go get it. She was breathing too fast. The hostess tells her to calm down and sit down, then she goes to tell the team. Then another member of the crew walks over and the story changes to, "No, I have my passport. I need the purse because it has medicine in it." They ask what kind of medicine she's taking so they can make sure they have it on board. She snaps back at them saying it doesn't matter what kind of medicine and that she needs her bag right now. What the heck? After a while, they told her that the gate where the girl told them the purse would be had searched, but nothing was found. Things got even worse when her brother yelled at the crew that he could go find it. We were in takeoff position, which is away from the gate, when the crew told him that wasn't okay. He jumped out of his seat and demanded to talk to the pilot, saying, "I'm a pilot, I know what can be done." What the heck? 45 minutes in, the guy comes back, grabs his carry-ons and his sister, and left the plane after making pathetic little speech saying his sister could not have survived the flight without the medication. At this point, everyone else on the flight was like, GTFO, dude, no one wants to hear that crap. Later, the captain told the people on board that they had to get off the plane because the purse had been found, but there was no medicine in it. Then the crew had to check each passenger's bags by hand to make sure these two idiots didn't leave anything strange behind. This made everyone freak out because the two idiots told a lie that could have been a security threat. The whole thing caused the flight to be late by about an hour, but it was so frustrating to see how rude they were to the nice crew and how much time they thought they deserved. Family groups and kids were all on the trip. She probably didn't want to lose her purse because she knew that if she made up a big deal, they'd get it and hand it back to her right away. Please don't let them on planes. What an absolute circus. The entitlement and audacity of those two are unreal. First, she loses her purse, already frustrating enough, but then fabricates a story about life-saving medicine to guilt the crew and passengers into bending over backward for her. And her brother's theatrics? Demanding to see the pilot and claiming he's a pilot himself like it's some VIP access pass. The fact that they delayed an entire flight, forced unnecessary security checks, and made everyone suffer because of their selfishness is infuriating. Their final speech was the cherry on top of this disaster. Honestly, I hope airlines flag these two for future flights. No one deserves to deal with that nonsense again. And our second story. Drunken caller wouldn't stop harassing us. I grew up in a pub. For those unsure of how that works, there was a bar downstairs and we lived in a flat/apartment upstairs. My parents used to be quite generous, and if someone was looking for a family member, they could call the bar phone, and if the person was in the bar, we'd call them through to take the call. This was a system that worked well for many years. Then my parents decided they'd seen enough of the bar trade and decided to take time out. Sadly, this was driven by my dad being diagnosed with lung cancer and being given limited time. We sold the pub and moved to a house in the same town, and as the family all knew the phone number, they took the number to the new house. Of course, this meant we still got called for folks who might be in the bar, but we always said, "Sorry, it's not the bar anymore, try the new number." What we then found was the new owners of the bar were less helpful than we were and refused to call folks through to take a call. This also predated the advent of the mobile phone by some time. Then came the night this became really unpleasant. I'd brought my dad home from a chemo session in the afternoon, and he was totally wrecked by it. This was towards the end of his life, and he was really ill. We were sitting, chatting, and the phone rang, so I answered it. There was a drunk-sounding woman's voice at the other end, and she said, "Is so-and-so in the bar?" I told her that this wasn't the right number for the pub anymore and gave her the new number. She said, "Okay," and hung up. About 10 minutes later, she rang back and said, "Nice try. I know he's in the bar. Can you get him for me?" I told her it wasn't the bar anymore and said goodbye. This continued for another hour, call after call after call. Every time she called, I told her to stop calling and that this wasn't a bar, it was a private house. Things went quiet for a while, and then we took my dad up and got him into bed and gave him his painkillers for the night. Around 11:30 p.m., the phone rang again, and it was the same woman, and by now she sounded very drunk. She said, "I know it's the bar, and I know you're hiding him from me. I'm his wife. Get him to the effing phone now." I heard my mom telling my dad it was okay and that we would leave the phone off the hook, but he was clearly in pain. At that point, I decided to screw her right over like she was screwing ours. "Okay, yes, this is the pub, but your husband can't come to the phone just now. He's just in the back room with his girlfriend. He said we shouldn't tell you where he is, but we do know he was asking if we had any rooms to let." I put the phone down, took it off the hook, and the next day I contacted the phone company to change the number. I have no idea what happened to that woman and her husband, but I don't really care. My dad passed a few weeks later. Time helps get things in perspective, and we're over 40 years down the road now. I still don't get why "you have the wrong number" doesn't compute for some folks. This story's equal parts heartbreaking and satisfying. Dealing with a loved one battling cancer is already one of life's toughest challenges, and having that kind of ignorant, drunken harassment on top of it? Beyond infuriating. The level of entitlement and refusal to listen from this woman was astounding. Who in their right mind ignores someone repeatedly saying, "This is a private house, not the pub"? But your final move? Absolutely legendary. The sheer poetic justice of flipping her obsession with control into chaos for her night was a great moment of revenge. You gave her the headache she deserved while standing up for your family during a really difficult time. And our last story. How a fence and a property line drove Karen out of the neighborhood. This story isn't mine, but comes from a neighborly war my friend grew up hearing about. It's a tale of two adversarial neighbors, Joe and Karen, whose backyard battle of wills became legendary in their community. Joe was a big-hearted guy of Italian descent whose family immigrated in the 1960s. He was known for his love of family, good food, and keeping his home in tip-top shape. Karen, on the other hand, was an uptight, self-proclaimed perfectionist who believed her every opinion was gospel. Karen had a particular dislike for Joe, her Italian neighbor, and never hesitated to let her prejudices shine through. Joe and Karen's properties backed onto each other, separated by an old, rickety wooden fence. But here's the catch. That old fence, built decades ago, had been mistakenly installed several feet inside Joe's property. Over time, Karen had treated this extra strip of land as her own, planting gardens and landscaping it as part of her yard. One fall, Joe decided the fence had seen better days and set about replacing it. He worked amicably with his neighbors on either side, agreeing to split the cost of the new fence, but when he approached Karen, things took a turn. Joe: "Hey Karen, I'm replacing the fence and thought we could split the cost. It'll benefit both of us and it's long overdue." Karen: "I'm not paying a dime for anything involving you or your tacky taste." Joe was taken aback. He tried reasoning with her, explaining that a new fence would improve property values for both of them, but Karen wasn't having it. Karen: "If you want a new fence, pay for it yourself. I don't care how it looks." So Joe did just that, but with a twist. Before construction, he hired surveyors to pinpoint the exact property line. To Karen's surprise, the survey revealed that her backyard gardens and landscaping encroached well into Joe's property. Instead of rebuilding the fence where it stood, Joe moved it to the correct property line. Suddenly, Karen found herself with a much smaller backyard. Months later, Karen's elaborate garden plans were in full bloom. Her beloved flower beds, now beyond the fence, sat squarely on Joe's land. That summer, Joe and his son strolled through the gate onto their reclaimed property and began tearing up the flowers. Karen spotted them from her window and stormed out, screaming, "Karen, what are you doing? Those are my flowers." "Actually, they're on my property. You planted them on my land." Karen was livid and called the police, demanding that Joe be charged with trespassing and destruction of property. But when the officers arrived, Joe calmly presented the survey documents and measured the property line in front of them. The land in question, including the flowers, was indeed his. The officers informed Karen that she wasn't allowed to use the land or even come within 3 feet of the fence. Karen was mortified, but couldn't do anything about it. Joe, however, wasn't done. To make his point crystal clear, he replaced Karen's flower beds with patio blocks. The next time Karen hosted a backyard barbecue, Joe and his family set up lawn chairs on the patio blocks. Dressed in tiny swimsuits, the entire family lounged in full view of Karen's guests. Karen screaming, "You're ruining my party! Get off my property!" Joe, "This isn't your property, Karen. Remember the survey?" The feud didn't stop there. Karen took to vandalizing the fence, tossing trash over it, and making snide remarks. Joe, meanwhile, got creative. He adorned his fence with small gargoyles and dark decorations, giving it a creepy, ominous vibe. One time, during a religious celebration at Karen's house, Joe set up a wrought iron table with black candles and goblets, creating a macabre scene that left Karen seething. The war dragged on for years, each side taking shots at the other. But one day, Joe noticed a for sale sign in Karen's yard. Finally, she was leaving. But Joe wasn't done yet. He painted the side of the fence facing Karen's property in a hideous, blinding shade of day-glow orange. When the real estate agent asked him to repaint it, Joe refused. Agent, would you consider repainting the fence? It's making the property harder to sell. Joe, not a chance. That's Karen's problem. The agent then suggested selling Karen an easement for the strip of land, allowing her to repaint the fence herself. Joe agreed, but only if Karen paid up front for his lawyer fees and the easement, a cost far higher than the original price of the fence. Karen had no choice but to accept. She sold the house at a reduced price and disappeared from the neighborhood. Joe, meanwhile, became fast friends with the new neighbors, often sharing laughs and drinks through the fence gate. Karen's audacity to claim Joe's land, refuse to pay for the fence, and then lose her mind when he reclaimed his property is crazy. From rearranging the fence to setting his family's lawn chair display during her cookout, Joe's deliberate motions matched her behavior exactly. The last brilliant addition was the day-glow orange fence, which guaranteed Joe's headaches persisted even as she sold her house. Joe's triumph was about winning well by firmly opposing entitlement, not only about territory. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.